You wanna know one thing that's scarier than zombies? Being sick or injured when you're a child. That's why I support Extra Life. Click the link in the description below to donate to my campaign to support the Children's Hospital of Wisconsin. I'm only $250 away from my goal. Link down below. That's it. That's my cold open. On with the video.
What's this? A Halloween video that doesn't have anything to do with Castlevania? Have I gone mad? Well, that and the only Castlevania arcade game I've played is Haunted Castle, and that game is cheaper than a standard mask from a party store. That being said, Halloween is a time for all sorts of monsters, be they vampires, werewolves, witches, succubi, politicians, you name it.
It's spooky.
But one of the most common types of monsters we see in media is the Walking Dead. No, not the show. Okay, the show deals with them, but you know what I'm talking about. Zombies. They're creepy, they're slimy, and they want your brains on a silver platter with fava beans and a nice Chianti. No surprise that reanimated corpses have shambled their way into popular culture. They've been a part of movies since the 1930s, and video games are no stranger to them either. And one of the games that popularized the use of zombies in gaming was a game by SEGA called The House of the Dead. This game is a co-op enabled on-rails shooter and was developed by SEGA's AM1 division, built on the Model 2 arcade hardware, and utilized the same engine as SEGA's previous rail shooter, Virtua Cop. Released in 1996, the same year as the first game in a certain other famous zombie-based franchise, The House of the Dead was an important title, not just for zombies in gaming, but in modern culture as well. In fact, in a 2013 interview, George Romero, you know, the guy who made Night of the Living Dead, cited both this game and the first Resident Evil as having been major contributors to the rising popularity of zombies in the 21st century media. Perhaps without this game, Call of Duty World at War might not have had the mode that most people remember it for. Of course, without this game, we also might not have got Uwe Boll's terrible movie adaptations. First game takes place in the year 1998. The plot kicks off as protagonist Thomas Rogan, an agent for a group known as the AMS, receives a distress call from his fiancée, Sophie Richards, a researcher for the DBR Corporation. Rogan, accompanied by a fellow agent known only as G, rush to the source of the call, a mansion somewhere in Europe that's crawling with zombies that are killing everyone. Don't ask me what AMS stands for, it's probably Anti-Monster Squad or something like that. Also, why G? I know it's supposed to add some mystery to him, but it just makes him kind of sound like a gangster.
Number one in the hood, G.
The mansion is run by the game's antagonist, Dr. Roy Curian, who's been seeking to breach the barrier between life and death. His research ended up driving him mad and creating a swarm of creatures which killed most of the researchers. The game kicks off as Rogan and G arrive at the mansion, and the rail shooting begins. The controls are as basic as expected for a rail shooter. You have a gun with a 6-shot clip, you shoot the zombies before they can attack you and drain your life flames, and you reload by shooting outside the screen. You soon come across researchers who are being chased by zombies. You don't get anything for rescuing these first ones, though. You soon find Sophie, who escaped the incident, but the reunion is cut short when she's grabbed by a freaky gargoyle creature. Next we come to another researcher, and here we see the significance of rescuing hostages. You need to save this one to enter through the front. Fail, and it's down to the sewers. This happens with several of the hostages in this game. Several others will give you extra lives upon rescue, which is always helpful. There's also the occasional life up or score item hidden in a barrel or pot or some other destructible item. Another thing of note is that even in this first level, there's a wide variety of undead. Standard shambling zombies, monkeys, frogs, dogs, leeches, zombies that throw barrels, big zombies with chainsaws, zombies with axes, and some of these creeps are faster than you think zombies would be. Eventually, Rogan and G reach Sophie, but again the reunion is cut short as she's thrown away like yesterday's trash by a gigantic armored monster with a big-ass axe. This is the first boss of the game, Chariot Type 27. The bosses of the main games are all named after the major arcana, and while each boss plays differently, they all have a simple common thread. Deflect the boss's attacks, and attack the weak point for massive memes, while trying not to wear out your arm from shooting so much if you're playing solo. As the chapter ends, Sophie tells Rogan that Curian must be stopped. before collapsing. And then you get a recap of how well you did, including if you saved enough hostages to get some extra life. Before we go on, let me say a few words about the presentation. The graphics are definitely a product of their time, with the polygonal models being good for the year, but definitely dated. The music, on the other hand, holds up rather well with the level and the boss themes. The voice acting, on the other hand, is squarely in the so bad it's good category.
Logan, it's you!
Nobody leaves here alive.
Loki!
See what I mean? The plot really doesn't advance that much in Stage 2, but we do get a bunch more creatures, including bats, nimble zombies with knives, and what seems like swamp things. Meanwhile, as the stage progresses, you begin to see the more sci-fi side of this game as you go through the surface of the laboratory inside the mansion, and learn that there are other ways to find alternate paths besides just rescuing hostages. But before you investigate the lab further, you run into the same creature that took Sophie, Hanged Man Type 041. Aside from the bats, this is another basic boss. At least the last phase of the fight is suspenseful, as you finish it off while hanging from the ledge. After making your way deeper into the lab in Stage 3, and facing off with more zombies, including ones with ball and chains and mutant spiders, you confront Curian, who promptly escapes, leaving you to fight Hermit Type 6803, which is a giant freaking spider. Hope you don't have a phobia. Of course, this is another basic boss as you pump its mandible full of munitions. After the boss is exterminated, you reach the final stage, which is a mini boss rush with Chariot and Hanged Man, followed by a small corridor of zombies leading straight to Curian's inner sanctum. But like all mad scientists, he has one last trick up his sleeves. And like all mad scientists that create ultimate weapons that they can't control, he gets bumped off as the creature declares his omnicidal intentions. This is Magician Type 0, and he's easily the best boss in the game. He's fast, attacks quickly, but gives you enough time for skilled players to react, and he has an awesome theme to boot. It's like all the effort on boss fights in this game went into just this one. After a fierce battle, the beast is destroyed, but not before giving an ominous warning. Their mission accomplished, the agents leave the mansion as the credits roll. Your final ending depends on how well you did, but the good ending reveals that Sophie did in fact survive. But, of course, this was only the beginning. After all, how was Curian able to afford this research in the first place? That answer is revealed in the sequel, The House of the Dead 2, released in 1998 using the Naomi arcade board. It follows in the footsteps of its predecessor with the same basic gameplay, boss mechanics, and branching paths, but the main improvement is that reloading is made easier, now only requiring you to point outside the screen. Being on a new arcade board does a bit for the presentation, as the character models and environments do look a bit better than its predecessor. The voice acting, on the other hand, is even worse than the first game to the point where it becomes legendary. Listen to the first line in the game.
We're meeting G over there.
And one immediately wonders if Tommy Wiseau was the voice director for this game.
I did not hit her. I did not. Oh, hi, Mark.
So the plot picks up just over a year after the previous game as two new AMS agents, James Taylor and Gary Stewart, arrive in a zombie-ridden Venice, or the equivalent thereof, to rendezvous with G, only to find out that the gangsta was injured in the ordeal. He gives the two agents his notebook, and the action proceeds. As the pair race through the town, they run into the imp from before, who declares that they will... Gollum, is that you? He's part of the first boss, Judgment Type 28. Already this boss gives a big first impression. The imp is the weak point, and you have to shoot it before the armor can come down on you. Once the boss is beaten, your backup, two new agents named Harry Harris and Amy Crystal, arrive to assist in the investigation. Between chapters, you see this guy on a desk musing about how his plans are proceeding. The second chapter starts with a zombie trying to cause a car crash. Man, and I thought traffic in LA was bad. A few new enemies show up here, including crawling half-zombies, fish, and owls that are not what they seem. The path you take through the stage determines where you fight the boss, Hierophant Type B05, an aquatic merman of a boss who attacks with spears and fish. Beat him and another badly voiced appearance by this dude. We soon find out who the guy is in a conversation among the agents as Chapter 3 begins. Turns out the guy on the desk, Caleb Goldman, is behind the attack, and was footing the bill for Curian's research. Unfettered capitalism is literally deadly. And now we get the other new thing in this game, vehicle sections. Calm down everybody, they're no different from the rest of the zombie busting in this game. Anyway, in the middle of the ride, the agents get a call from Goldman, inviting them to the Coliseum. Harry suspects a trap, but decides to go anyway, because otherwise we'd have an apocalypse instead of a plot. Reaching the underground, they decide to split up and the players run into a 5-headed serpent called Tower Type 8000. This is actually a two-phase fight, as after you take out the side heads, the main head escapes and you fight it in a different area. After you beat that, you get a call from Amy basically saying that she and Harry are in trouble. After another stage of zombies, including masked zombies, lizards, and sword wielders, you reach the Colosseum, Goldman's ugly mug shows up, and...
This is a present from me to you. Look at your left.
That cage has Amy, Harry, and the next boss, Strength Type 205, which you fight in a maze. After beating it, an injured Harry gives you the keys to a car he's parked in the square and tells you where Goldman is. This leads to a boss rush level consisting of rematches with Judgment, Hierophant, and... the Magician? Once you slap them, you enter the final chapter by shooting weird futuristic creeps before entering Goldman's office.
It's like they're inviting us in.
It's like I haven't taken acting lessons.
After more of these futuristic creeps and a rematch with Tower, you confront Goldman, and it turns out that his motivation for all of this is...
Man committed a sin, disturbing the life cycle of nature. The original sin that man is responsible to protect the life cycle.
If anyone knows the text-to-speech program that used to do this voicing, I'd appreciate it. Anyways, Goldman introduces his magnum opus, Emperor Type Alpha, which honestly is a weaker final boss than Magician was. After you pump its heart full of lead, Goldman declares that...
In time, a successor will come.
And commits not feeling so good. And roll credits. Yeah, the House of the Dead 2 was an improvement over its predecessors, and apparently SEGA thought so too, as it based a few spin-offs on this one, including Typing of the Dead, Pinball of the Dead, and even English of the Dead. But what about Goldman's successor? Well, we don't have time to worry about that. We have the aftermath of the fall of civilization to worry about. That's right, the House of the Dead 3, originally released on 2002 and developed on the Sega Chihiro, picks up in 2019, when zombies have literally caused the apocalypse. Rogan, one of the protags from Game 1, is leading a paramilitary unit infiltrating a facility that was owned by Curian, hoping to find the cause. Already the first difference is clear on the change of weapons to a shotgun. With it comes a bit of delay in reloading, forcing you to be a little smarter in your shots. Also, you get bonuses for perfect headshots and killing 2 zombies with 1 shot. Anyways, when Rogan finds the source, he gets clocked by a giant zombie guard, and we see a mysterious man as the screen fades. And that was Chapter 0. Chapter 1 picks up 2 weeks later, with Rogan's daughter Lisa teaming up with G to find him. As you fight through the zombies and birds, another difference arises. You don't rescue civilians anymore. Instead, you'll have to bail your partner out of danger from time to time, with each successful rescue giving you an extra life. About halfway through the level, the mutant guard, Death Type 0011, starts to pursue you. Boss fights are handled a little differently starting in this game. Not only do you see the health bar of the boss, but there's also a smaller cancel bar, which shows that you can interrupt an enemy's attack if you attack the weak point enough. This was actually taken from a collaboration between Sega and Namco called Vampire Knight 2 years prior. Eventually, G and Lisa escape to continue their investigation, and now you get a ranking based on your performance and extra health if you were good enough. Between chapters, Lisa talks with G about Rogan, and we get flashbacks about how Curian started his forbidden research to save his ailing son Daniel. This comes back soon. The interesting thing about this game is you pick the order of the next 3 stages. You can check the EFI genome ward and deal with a mutated sloth known as the Fool Type 0028, you can check out the L2 bioplant, a literal plant, and fight the Sun Type 8830, or you can go through the Information Systems department and finish your fight with Death. The stages may play out differently depending on the order you pick. Eventually, you reach the areas where Chapter 0 took place. You soon find Rogan, alive and kinda well, and apparently it was the Mystery Man who was helping him. And it's Daniel Curian, you know, Roy Curian's son, and he's here to shut down his father's last legacy. So while G gets the still hurting Rogan out of Dodge, Lisa and Daniel head towards the core of the facility.
Wait, so you've been playing with G for most of the game, who's a major player in the series, then you introduce this new guy, and he's the son of the main villain, and you're making him a main protagonist in the second half of the final level?
That is bullshit! Blazing, still my heart is blazing. If the word kill me, I don't need a new word out there.
So you reach the core where the Wheel of Fate type 0000 is waiting, which is actually Curian, who's been regenerating for the previous 19 years. Thanks a lot, Goldman. So after a long and admittedly annoying final battle, Lisa and Daniel shut down the Fiend for good. As Lisa and Daniel meet up with Rogan and G, the latter talk about how it will be up to the new generation to decide their fate, while Daniel vows to return if humanity goes astray. Meanwhile, a mysterious stranger remains, saying he didn't know its true purpose. And that's House of the Dead 3. Overall, this is honestly a weaker entry than 2 was. It feels shorter, has less of the charm than the second had, the bosses aren't quite as good, and the change in weapon, and by extension reloading, feels kinda jarring. However, I still wouldn't quite call it bad. The voice acting is still cheesy, just in a different way, by the way.
When a lady says no, she means it.
But where do you go from there? Well, the answer SEGA had for the 4th game was... Yep, turns out that going from a zombie-infested city in the year 2000 to a zombie apocalypse in 2019 leaves a pretty considerable time gap. So yeah, what happened? Well, The House of the Dead 4, released in 2005 on SEGA's Lindbergh engine, begins to fill in the missing time. Taking place in 2003, James, returning from 2, is visiting the European branch of the AMS with rookie Kate Taylor, hoping to dig up more info on the Goldman case when an earthquake leaves them trapped. Several days later, you guessed it, zombies. So the agents grab whatever weapons they can, those being Uzis and grenades for this game, and begin to fight their way to the surface. While your new firearm has a lot of ammo before you have to reload, and gives you automatic fire, the game's new scoring system rewards successive weak point hits, which will factor into your rank, along with accuracy and overall score. Also, zombies are now capable of grabbing and pushing you. In the case of the latter, just shoot the surrounding ghouls and you're back on your feet. If you get grabbed, you gotta shake your gun to get loose. This mechanic also plays into the game's QuickTime events. Yes, instead of rescuing civilians or your partner, there are QuickTime events where you need to shake your gun, or in the case of the PS3 home version, the Move controller. James and Kate make their way to the elevator, but are dragged into the sewers by Justice Type 0053, who has a nasty flying kick. Once you blast its tongue enough, the beast goes down, but James has a bad feeling.
Got a bad feeling about this. What the heck is going on outside?
Now our agents are fighting their way through the sewers, dealing with zombies and crap. Eventually, they make their way to the classified info room and discover that someone is trying to launch nuclear missiles.
Okay, whoa. Hold on just one undead minute. We've been dealing with zombies of all shapes and sizes, and gigantic mutants and creatures that could body humanity without breaking a sweat, and the big evil plan of the game is goddamn nukes?
That is bullshit! Blazing! Still my heart is blazing!
With time running out before the proverbial midnight, James and Kate continue towards the surface, being briefly stalled by a pair of spiders known as the Lovers Type 6805. Okay then. The smaller spider is the weak point, so blast the life out of it and enjoy a flashback of Goldman ranting about
Life cycle.
Stage 3 takes place in the subway, which is the closest place to the surface, except the path is dead end after dead end, ultimately ending with a thrilling chase through a subway car being pursued by the Empress Type 1210, and its double-bladed chainsaw. How awesome is that? After laying the Fiend low, more flashbacks, and the duo fight their way to the upper part of the station and reach the surface, where zombies have overrun the city again. Suddenly, hello PS3-era jiggle physics! Temperance Type 0483 is unique, as you can't actually do damage with your guns. Instead, you have to fend off both its attacks and the swarms of zombies until you reach a switch and drop a giant clock on its head. Nice. Unfortunately, the city isn't so nice right now. James then gets a message on his PDA, and it turns out that this whole mess was Goldman's contingency plan. With only an hour to stop the launch, the agents burn rubber towards the Goldman building.
It's almost like we're being invited in.
It's like they're inviting us in.
In the main lobby is the Star Type 0001, which looks like a cross between the Magician and Dante. After a fierce but thrilling fight, James begins to feel the effects of an old injury, but the duo press on through the building, and apparently Goldman got decorating tips from Geese Howard. After fighting through the robots, they manage to stop the launch with seconds to spare, when they're greeted by a congratulatory message from Goldman, who explains that he wanted to revert humans back to their natural state, and that Pandora's box has been opened. In the courtyard below is Goldman's final creation, the World-type Beta. This is a great final boss with powerful ice attacks and 2 phases to survive. Even after beating its second form though, it grows into a third form. With no alternative left, James sets his PDA to self-destruct and finishes off the creature and sacrificing himself in the process, leaving Kate alone. And there's that Mystery Man again. Overall, this was a great game. I'd say on par with 2. If 2 is like an 80s B-movie, then 4 is like a modern B-movie. QuickTime events aside, the bosses are great, the music is pumping, and the feel is overall solid. There was a continuation called House of the Dead 4 Special, where Kate teams up with G to deal with Justice, again, and Magician, again, but only 2 units were produced in America, one of which broke down and the other is in the hands of a private collector. The scenario is available on the PS3 port, however. After that, the series went dormant, not counting 2009's non-canon prequel Overkill, until 2018, when SEGA decided to pick up right where they left off with a new title, House of the Dead Scarlet Dawn. Built on the Unreal Engine 4, Scarlet Dawn is one in a long line of franchise revivals in the past few years.
Unfortunately, there's no news of any home release for this game, so the only way we can play it at the moment is on one of these bad boys.
Now, there are some differences between the Japanese and the international version, so I'll be talking about the features of the latter, since that's the one I played, obviously. First thing you notice is that before each level, you can choose 2 auxiliary weapons to switch between with the side trigger. The game takes place in 2006, 3 years after 4. Kate returns from 4 and looking dressed to kill, and joining her is James' brother Ryan. They're investigating the mysterious Scarecrow Manor, which, you guessed it, has had zombies unleashed on unsuspecting partygoers. Much like 4, you have a machine gun, which can reload automatically this time. Many elements return from previous games, such as bonuses for successive headshots, QTEs and rescues, and zombies that are able to push you down, for instance. As Kate and Ryan make their way through the manor, a fire breaks out, causing the place to start to collapse. Kate calls in a chopper, but there's just too many zombies, so I guess they're hoofing it. Suddenly, Chariot returns and throws zombies at you. Eventually, Kate and Ryan escape as the chamber collapses, and the stage select from House of the Dead 3 returns. Route A takes Kate and Ryan to the manor's prison and research room, where they face the resurrected Chariot, save a bunch of prisoners, and uncover yet another human extinction plot. Route B leads to the laboratory and a car ride through the sewers, where the mystery man is revealed to be Thornheart, an associate of Curian and Goldman, and their ancestors founded the organization behind everything. A fight with the eldritch squid called the Priestess follows and ends with a close encounter with flammable sewage and a nearby flamethrower. Route C takes you through the foyer and Thornheart's study, where they discover Thornheart's plan, Noah's Ark, a plot to bring about a new evolution. And hello, Hanged Man, long time no see! And finished by burning to death. In between levels, you get Thornheart ranting about his views on evolution and his master plan. Man, this guy's nuts. The final stage takes you through a chapel-like area filled with fog and zombies. Along the way, you find monuments to Curian, who's still in his resurrection process by this point, and Goldman, who's still very much dead. Eventually, the agents reach Thornheart's inner sanctum.
It's as if we're invited to go inside.
It's like they're inviting us in.
And there's Thornheart, who's alive despite a deadly disease through sheer stubbornness. After rambling about his plan, he unleashes his masterpiece, the Moon. And this is honestly the worst final boss in the series. Why? It's essentially a scripted sequence. No matter how much you pelt it with gunfire, you'll never bring its health to 0. All you can do is fend off its attacks as it continues to grow and change into a winged monstrosity. That is, until Ryan gets fed up, leading to one final QTE where he rams a steel pole into the freak's forehead, causing it to get struck by lightning and burning to death. Kate considers the final thunderbolt to be a divine intervention from the late James. And roll credits, plus the final scene, 3 of 4 of which reveal that Thornheart is far from dead. Overall, Scarlet Dawn is a great continuation of the series. The visuals benefit greatly from the Unreal Engine, the music is a good mix of action tunes and suspenseful melodies, QTEs are handled admittedly well, and the gameplay elements from past games still hold up. My main gripe is with the bosses, specifically the new ones. The returning ones are fine, enhancing their original fights, but both the Priestess and the Moon are basically scripted sequences that end with an event, and that just doesn't feel right. Gripes with the bosses aside, however, this is what a revival of a long-dormant franchise should be. A game that doesn't forget what made the series what it is, right down to the cheesy dialogue and voice acting.
How do you feel? Cool, yeah?
And there's still over 10 years of plot to work with, so I'm interested in seeing what else SEGA has in store for this series.
Honestly, one of the biggest obstacles to the series' continued success outside of Japan might just be the arcade itself. I mean, arcades are alive and well in Japan, but there just aren't as many in America as there used to be. I'm just lucky there was around one nearby so I could actually play Scarlet Dawn. I hope we get a home release at some point. We might actually get one, considering the first 2 games are getting remade. I'm the Quarter Guy, and until next time, the arcade is closed. Due to a zombie invasion.
You know, the reason that Mega Man gets rid of all his weapons after every mission is so he doesn't go crazy with power. And to be honest, I don't blame him. I mean, power corrupts after all. And considering all the weapons he's picked up from all the robots he's trashed, that's a lot of power that could do a lot of corrupting. And let me tell you, no one, and I mean no one, likes corrupted hard drive. Next time, Top 10 Worst Robot Master Weapons. It's game time! Thank you all for watching. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to subscribe and click that bell so that you know when I upload something. Also, feel free to check out my other stuff and consider supporting my Patreon for access to my Discord server and other cool perks. See you all next time!